Christmas when I was 9 years old. My parents bought me a motorcycle for Christmas. I got a toolbox and some tools, and we were like, what are these for? And at the time, they were metric, and nothing was metric back then. So my uncle was like, oh, those must be for me in my car. And then my dad rolled the motorcycle out of the back room into the living room. It was a Honda MR50. Little tiny dirt bike. It was just holy crap. It wasn't something my brother and I had asked for or wanted. I hadn't really thought about it at all, but he thought it would be something cool because we were the family was into cars and things like that. So it was on an evening, and the next morning they had bought us helmet and gloves and boots, the whole thing. So the next day we were out at the local school and riding around in the fields, and I had to learn how to use a clutch when I was 9 years old. And it took me about 5 minutes. My parents had been driving stick cars, so I understood what the clutch actually did, even at that age. I got a full-size dirt bike when I was 14, and then I got my first street bike when I was about 24, 25. I didn't have a lot of money, but I was able to buy a brand new Ninja 250, and then that got me hooked on sport bikes. Just much quicker, much faster, and of course I had to see how fast it would go. So that bike wasn't very fast, but it was always wide open throttle on that bike, always. And then my brother and I became good friends with a couple guys in Holland that road raced. I was always interested in racing, watching racing since I was a little kid. That's what my parents watched on weekends. And I went to that school they had, and my brother and I borrowed bikes from these guys from Holland. And 2 weeks later, I bought the bike that I had ridden on the track. Yeah, it was like, I gotta go. Yeah, I definitely gotta start this now. I gotta do this more, much more. So it's definitely an addiction. We started in April the following year, and now it's been 30 years. Been racing 30 years now. I probably have more racing laps at Grattan than anybody else. As far as racing, I don't think there's many people that have as many laps as I do there. My first race, and I was out there, and I think I'm doing really good, and it was like an 8-lap race, and I think I'm doing pretty good, and 5 laps in, I got lapped. And I'm like, holy crap, those guys are going a lot faster than I am. So that was an awakening, and it took me 2 years before I ever touched my knee on the ground. And then everything clicked, and I went from being the guy in the back at finishing 15th or 20th to being in the top 5 all the time. I was having fun, having a good time, and I was an amateur. There's amateur and expert levels, and I was an amateur rider. The expert guys were showing up in April with brand new bikes, right off the showroom floor. They're showing up, they're stripping it, doing the race prep for everything on it. And I'm like, man, that's just crazy. Why are they doing that? I spent $2,500 for my bike. I don't need to spend 10 grand. Yeah, and then I went fast, and I spent 10 grand. I spend the winter tearing the bike apart. I do all my own suspension work. I do all my own motor work. I take the whole bike apart. I paint it. I do everything on myself. Saves a lot of money. I paint my bikes. They're fiberglass. I paint them with rattle cans because it's going to get scratched. It's going to get beat up, and you don't feel bad when you crash and you scratch it because, no big deal. It cost me $40. It didn't crash a $1,000 paint job. It's not about the shine. It doesn't matter at all. I don't care about that part. I just want it to go fast.